Hey everyone, welcome to Dev Interrupted. This is your co-host Conor Bronsdon, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Simone Casciaroli, head of engineering at Onto. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually set up a conversation at LeadDev New York earlier this year, but had audio issues. So I'm really excited to have a chance to have you back on the show. There was an awesome opportunity to kind of see one of your talks there, actually. And I was losing my voice because we were talking to so many people. You were like doing these amazing speeches, and it was really a great event. And you really caught my attention based on the talk that you gave titled, Are We Building Engineering Platforms Using the Right Metrics? And obviously, as anyone who listens to the show knows, we are very passionate about understanding engineering here at Dev Interrupted. Can you introduce this talk to our audience?
Yeah, of course. So this thought come from a number of passion of mine. So on one end, I truly believe in the power of platforms, in enabling teams and creating an environment where basically like you can do, but your team can do their best. At the same time, I really believe in driving engineering through like a metrics approach. It gives so much more autonomy to teams. Instead of saying something like you should implement X and Y, Z, you focus on the outcome. You focus on what you want them to achieve. I come from a business product background as well. I run two startups. I work with a number of startups as well. And for me, it's very clear that, a platform team should basically kind of treat the team that are using the platform and, so trying to use the same umbrella of knowledge and tools that I normally use if I had to run a company that had a specific sort of target audience. I do the same for platform. I literally use the same product tools that I would do if I had to run a SaaS and have a certain target audience. It's just that I do internally for the internal teams. So that was the idea. I think platform as a term has a lot of like has been abused massively. And as a consequence, I really see some places where the use of metrics I don't think is right. And if it was just like syntactically wrong, I would be okay with that. The thing is that I see big impact, big negative impact by not using the right metric. So this is why I felt like this is definitely something I want to get out of my chest. And so that's the talk, I guess.
What are some
Um,
of those metrics that you feel are causing problems when they're being used?
so this is going to be super controversial. I think so. Let's talk about something that we're all familiar with that are, let's call it infrastructural or, cloud platforms. This is something that a lot of company have a platform. Now, in this space, as you know, because this is probably a space that you follow very closely. There has been like a huge amount of progress recently. We used to have ops teams that would be responsible basically for deploying what the engineering team would be responsible for building. And then at a certain time, we start to talk about DevOps. Obviously, there is still a bit of confusion what DevOps is, but the truth is that sometimes when we build platform teams, I think we treat the platform almost like an ops team. So we target them with metrics that are actually metrics for the whole company. I don't know, like, are we sure that, for example, the normal culprit is something like, are we sure that DORA is a metrics for the platform?
Hmm.
Are we sure that DORA is actually not, for the teams? And then it's trickled out to the platform. So these are where I see more struggle, or assuming that, I don't know, or security. Security is another one, improve the security standing of our company. I know potentially the platform team has all the keys to the AWS account or the Google account or the cloud account, but doesn't mean that they are responsible. They are solely responsible for security. Absolutely not. So if we take a product approach, probably those teams should look at what metrics or what goals their customer have, basically their internal teams. Then depending on that, define their own metrics. I'm expecting that a lot of their customers, a lot of their teams are going to have metrics or outcome that are related to DORA. It could be that they want to speed up how long it takes to deploy to production. It could be some team have it, some team don't. So it's kind of like maybe some team are releasing every couple of weeks, and it's fine because I don't know, it's a special product that they don't get to iterate quickly. There are the teams where actually, I don't know, changing moving 10%, reducing time to production is key. So even that, we should also build different pathway for different teams that have different needs potentially. So I guess this is where the problem I see. One side of the problem, at least. The other side, no. The other side is because we focus so much on metrics that are looking mostly are, let's say, if we talk about platform as a cloud platform, we mostly look at metrics that are related to the operational aspect. We forget that as a platform team, if the user experience or developer experience of our tool is poor, we're causing a huge amount of cost and pain to the other teams, especially for platform team that basically everybody uses it. Let's imagine a team that has hundreds of teams. If something you could have done I don't know, in 2 hours instead of 6, that is 4 hour waste across 100 teams. If this is painful and it's blocking people and it frustrates people, that affects so much the company. Before I start working for the company I work right now, I work for a company called Babylon Health. And at the time, I was working with a data platform. Every time we were building functionality with that data platform, really the team morale would drop into zero, it was unreal. The reason was because the whole developer experience of using the tool was poor. They weren't doing anything wrong. It's just they weren't really measuring how their work was impacting us. The only thing we could do was escalating the bad experience. So this is where I start asking questions like, well, okay, but how do you know if you're successful? And, the usual metrics was we're improving how long it takes for you to deploy this thing to production. We're improving how long it takes you to, measure new data entry and so on. It was these are all great. But what about there is something else. These are, how happy are we with this? How hard it is to onboard with your platform? All this kind of thing, all these kind of metrics. And I must admit that was basically the other part of the challenge that I foresee.
So this is where you kind of view platform as an internal product that needs to have differentiated goals, differentiated needs, because the customers you're serving are distinctly different. They're the developers, they're the other teams. I remember at one point you asked the audience at your LeadDev New York talk how many of them had worked on platform teams, and not many raised their hands. But many more raised their hands when you asked if they had benefited from a platform team. And I'm sure others would have also raised their hands if we had asked if they'd been frustrated by a platform team. There's very clearly a shift happening right now where companies are paying more attention to these internal tooling pieces, these internal platform teams. How do you see that shift taking place in startups, whether at Onto or elsewhere?
It's a great question. First, even if you're the team that you're using, so sometimes you have even a team doesn't have the platform name, but you're using their tools, you're using their APIs, you basically integrate with them. They're basically building a product for you. So this is why it's so common. Now again, as platform as a name has exploded. So everybody wants to have a platform in their name. It look great. In fairness, it's mostly because it make it look more generic, multi-purpose, something that they can achieve more. But the reason you can achieve more is because it's a product. It's not purchase. It's not hey, we now ship the continuous integration server is in prod. Go ahead and use it. That's iteration one. Then you need to trade with the teams and understand how to improve it. So by moving those teams into platform teams, putting that label, you have some responsibility. With great power comes great responsibilities. And the responsibility is that, they need to start treating, other teams like customers. So obviously it's very different depending on your skill. Onto is not a huge engineering team. We are about 25, 30 engineers. So we have a tiny platform and mostly it's focused on infrastructure kind of platform. But at the same time, I was having a meeting where I invited platform this morning, for example, to understand the pain point of our teams. Because again, if those are your customers, everywhere, every place where you can go to understand their pain points is a good data point for you. How can we help to make their life easier? How can we help to make them faster? That's at the end is the goal of every platform. Imagine if as a platform, Often these things come with gated approach to platform, right? Let's assume a platform decide to do, we're going to improve security. So we're going to include like a gated approach to security vulnerability. That's great. But what's the impact on the team? Are they going to make us faster or slower? If it's slower, there is something we can do because, we want to make it easy to have a secure system, no? So these are, I think, the trend that I'm seeing. Like, obviously, the more people are using platform, the more hopefully they realize that platform, despite it's not just a name, it comes with a number of responsibility, a number of tools. Probably like another thing that is not very common, but it should be more, just that it's a challenge, is to have someone that has some product thinking that is in the team. Very often, platform teams don't have a product person. And mostly because you need like a product person that is comfortable with, technology knowledge. But at the same time, maybe the right approach would be to take an engineer and, that is passionate about product and make it act as a product manager. It's very hard if everybody is wearing the engineering hat because you don't have like a friction. Everybody that is an engineer know exactly what's easy and what's hard. And if you don't have someone that push and is, like roasting for the customer, then it's sometimes it's hard. So it's saying, well, should we check, with our customers how they're doing? Should we run a survey? Should we measure their behaviors? These are all things that I think are gonna come. I see last year I wrote like a blog post on this concept, and there were many articles. Now I see many more articles on the topic of, well, let's treat platform as a product. It's been a concept for a while because it was mentioned, I think, in Team Topology that now I think it's 3 years old as a book. But I think the whole concept of, okay, what does it mean to have a platform as a product? I think that's surfacing more and more in the current year. So I'm expecting to see it much more commonly discussed.
Yeah, we had the Team Topologies authors on in, I believe, season 2, so a little about a year and a half ago, and really great conversation. But it's interesting to see how much more I'm hearing their book be cited now, a couple years on after publishing, because it's very clearly become popularized in the public consciousness, and engineering leaders like yourself have read it and are saying, "Oh, like how can we apply this?" And one concept that comes up a lot, whether it's through their work or through other conversations with engineering leaders, is this problem that you're alluding to around, are we treating the challenges we're trying to solve as something where, hey, output is our goal or the outcome is the goal? Are we trying to actually solve the customer problem? And it's kind of an eternal struggle for a lot of engineering teams, but particularly for platform teams, where, to your point, it can be easy to kind of lose track of who your internal customer is, or to think, oh, I understand the problem here. Let me just go solve it. How do you think
Yeah.
about that challenge?
It's tricky. I'll be honest, it's tricky. It's a great question, but it's tricky. The reason is it's much easier to deliver to an to an output than to an outcome. Because it's kind of like the output is kind of like, it's still hard, but it's kind of like, well, let's release that feature by X meaning like a range of time that you can deliver. It's much harder to say, let's change a behavior less, because normally an outcome is often related to someone else's behavior or some internal measurement of, stability, security, and so on. So that's much, much harder. And that's the challenge. The challenge is that mostly like we require a bit of a, mental shift, I guess. I'm saying, okay, if we are optimizing for output, we're going to optimize to get something out as efficiently as possible. Now, imagine if what we release as efficiently as possible is a very long release that, is very efficient. We release in 2 months, but then it doesn't do anything to the outcome. I mean, what's the point? So if instead you give it to the team, the tool to say, like, look, we relatively care about the output. Like what we care is to move the outcome. The team will self-organize, will organize themselves to start to iterate until they reach the outcome. And so, maybe if you knew upfront what they needed to achieve the outcome that they want, probably that would be more efficient. But we don't. We really don't. It's a bit like when, we're launching a website and you're trying to say, oh, we want 10% conversion of the sign-up funnel. I wish we know how to do it. We know best practice, but except if you've done the exact same thing with the same target audience on, it's gonna be a lot of learning. oh, what
Right.
are the main pain points when people sign up, for example? And so similar is for platform. And like, well, also we are expert in the field in the platform, right? So also understanding when we build something, when we build a tool, that for us is obvious. It's kind of like, oh, how do we provide this on a platform? Oh, that's easy. We got to do something with Terraform, and we are really mentally we eat a Terraform for lunch. But what about the other teams? So how long is it going to take them to get used to it? When they get an error, for us, like understanding error for time to time is like that. What about them? This is just an example, but again, like platform is just because it's partially close to my heart. But when I start trying to use these approaches to platform as a product, actually, I wasn't even working on a cloud team. I was working on a very different platform team. So it applied to every type of platforms.
So the thing that is kind of a through line through this conversation is the idea of using the right metrics and customer centric metrics. What's
Mm.
actually delivering for the customer, because that's what's going to drive value for the business and or for your team, right? So if it's a development team, are we actually improving development experience? If it's an external facing team, are we actually improving the customer experience and driving revenue? What in your mind are the right customer centric metrics to leverage, whether you're on a platform team or an external facing product team?
Okay. Now, obviously, like the answer may change, but I can tell you what I used. So I used a framework called HEAT. It stands for happiness, efficiency, adoption, and task success. Right. And I didn't invent anything. Basically, like come from a framework that was invented by Google called HEART. I just removed a number of metrics that I didn't think was very useful in platform and introduced some that actually I think are very important for the platform team. So this is where it's coming from. And the idea was to say, well, let's recap. We're building a product. Our customers are the teams that are actually like using our product. That's great. We know roughly what they want to achieve. They want to do their job better. They want to get faster at achieving their goals. So when we know that, how do we start? But
Hmm.
normally, like where I would start, imagine again, if you start a company, the first question you want to know is that, is anyone interested in my platform? Do they want to use it? Like you can't really spend months building something and then start looking for, it used to be like that. I used to work in a company that they built like a big, data platform, and then they were going around and say, are you interested? Are you interested? It's a big investment. And if it doesn't work, you waste a lot of money. So adoption is probably the first thing that you want to look at. And it sounds obvious because it's kind of like, of course, but we don't do it. Obviously, like platforms start with two different situations. Sometimes a platform start from scratch. So there is nothing like that. There is no service whatsoever like that in the organization. And someone feel like, ooh, you know what? Our team really need an analytics platform. It's kind of like, well, they're gonna start creating the dashboard. It's gonna be amazing, and we're gonna pull all the data from everywhere. And it's definitely we gotta do it. And other times, instead, it's the opposite. Other times, it's kind of like there is a team or a group of people or one person that is providing a service. It's more like a job for him, let's say. Let's imagine like, your usual ops team. They're manually, when you say, hey, this is ready, can you deploy it to production? They're already doing it. It just is not a platform. Why is not a platform? Because it's not service, because it's not a product. It's kind of like it's actually human being doing it. So it's not scalable. Now, if I ask you which one is riskier, implementing a platform from something that already exists or something that doesn't exist, which one would you pick as riskier?
Probably the one that doesn't exist already.
Right, because it's kind of like you don't know if actually people care. So my advice in this case is always like when you measure adoption, if you can move into a very like a low key, low fidelity kind of like service, you put a team that manually does what your platform wants to do, is a much cheaper and a better way to actually figure out adoption. Because what's the best adoption? It's not like, hey, I promise that we're gonna use it. It works, especially in big company. 1 month they say they're gonna use it, and then priorities shift. And then like it happened to me more than one time when I was at Babylon. We launched some new functionality. We ran down like we got like 3 or 4 teams that were interested in use it. By the time we released it, we had 2 only. The other
Mhm.
two kind of like they change priority. So also this is why like adoption you want to measure like in a way that's sort of like give you a bit of bandwidth. So kind of don't get one customer, get more than one. And that's one. So adoption again, this is why is probably the most important one. Trying to figure out exactly and treat them well because your first customer likely going to be the one that you want to get closer so that you can learn the most. And then normally, depending on another thing that I normally do, so adoption is definitely the first. And then depending on what road I had picked. So if I picked the road of doing like a lot of manual work, I may look into efficiency next. So let's imagine what I described. Like I wanted to do something. And at the beginning, instead of creating like a self-service analytic platform, what did I do? I put 3 engineers that, they get like a, a Jira board. And people say, hey, can you create this dashboard? Can you create this dashboard? This is the data, and they do everything.
People are using it.
Yeah. And so, when you figure out adoption, then the challenge is that, well, how do we scale it? Or how, at the moment, let's say it takes 15 days, a month to get dashboard created. And not only takes a long time, but internally, it doesn't scale because if you have more than 4 people asking for a different dashboard, basically we max out the team. So it's not very efficient. So then you want to look at efficiency. Efficiency is basically a way to say, how can I reduce the time it takes to support the service? I don't know, be 30%, 50%, 80%. And like in the talk when I was at LeadDev, I was as a joke, I said, well, I know you're thinking, like if I have something like that, I just stop people from posting things on my ticket tool and I'll fix it. No one is coming through. But efficiency is tricky because when you try to improve efficiency, normally you do it through some sort of automation. Sometimes the human aspect of doing something manually has a better user experience. Or potentially another thing that could happen is, well, I need to learn now a tool before I just create a ticket and that's it. And now I need to do something myself. So it's tricky because what happens is when you increase efficiency, other things drop. And what are these things? These are 2 other metrics. One I call it happiness, and one is task success. So those are verbatim from the HEART framework. Happiness is easy. It's kind of like how happy and satisfied your customer is with your software. It's kind of like, if they see you in the corridor or on Zoom, do they smile or, they want to slap in the face? If it's the second, I don't know. I think happiness is not very high. Obviously, you don't want to measure slap in the faces as a metrics. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, I don't know. I think it's quite painful as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So what do you do? Normally these are surveys, happiness is a type of survey when you kind of ask, like how happy you are, satisfied you are, and you also, if you are on a larger enough organization, my advice is when you do survey, really check with your research or user experience team, your product team, because they know much better than us how to write survey that are not biased. So that's definitely my suggestion. At the beginning, there is a lot of qualitative surveys. Sometimes we focus too much on the quantitative one, but I think a lot, especially at the beginning for a long time, you really need to get a lot of real feedback. These are question, discussion, and so on, interviews. And that's one. The other is task success. So let's imagine, apart from the habits, general habits, how successful your teams are at achieving what they need to do. So we mentioned before how long it takes to get the dashboard ready to them. Maybe with you, it was, I don't know, like it was, yes, a month, but they were just waiting. And, when it was ready, it was there. What if you launch it and it takes them 15 days? Yeah, it's half the time, but how do they feel about spending 15 days to set it up? So that's something you want to measure as well. That is kind of, depending on the size of the organization and how many customers you have, you can instrument your tools to measure some of those behaviors. But again, I would mix quantitative and qualitative type of research in there. So get some feedback and get some measurement if you can. Again, if you have 3 customers, pointless to instrument your software because, variance is going to be like quite high. But yeah, these are the four one. And normally another advice I give is that don't focus on one at a time. Try to counterbalance them. So as I mentioned before, efficiency is a tricky one because you want to increase it without affecting happiness and task success. What you want to do is you want to agree with yourself and with your team how much you're happy to lose. So you're going to say, I don't know, let's say, I want to increase efficiency 50%. At the same time, I don't want to get happiness lower than, I don't know, 10%, but that success, I don't know, less than, I don't know, 80% of what it was before or something like that. So that if something happened, you can stop. Okay, this is not working. This is not a solution. This is not an option. We need to find another solution. So this is how I did it. I was working in a workflow platform team, so quite different from like an infrastructure team, and we implemented all of them for a year and a half. It was very cool. It was very cool because everybody in the team understood what we were trying to optimize for. It was easy to explain to the senior leadership what we were trying to achieve, what we were focused on things. Sometimes it's hard for a platform team to justify why we do something, especially efficiency.
Yeah, I appreciate this framework context. I think to your point, there are multiple challenges here depending on the size of the company, who your internal customers are, and how you get started. So I love that idea of focusing on adoption first and then making sure you're paying attention to all the metrics. And I'm sure, as you alluded to, sometimes DORA metrics are the right way to approach pieces of this problem. And maybe they're a good fit for some adoption or happiness or efficiency metrics, but other times they're not. And I'm sure it also impacts the kind of service level objectives, the SLOs that teams set out, depending on what they're doing as well.
Yeah. And normally for me, so let's talk about security. It's an area where I spent like the past 6 months. So I didn't set up an SLO for the platform team. I set up an SLO for all the product teams to improve their security. How long I'm expecting to have like a vulnerability to be able to be fixed, if it's critical, if it's high, if it's low, if it's medium. Well, that was the SLO for the product teams. And the reason was for them was because, well, obviously there is a lot going on. There is a lot that the platform team need to do for the infrastructure to make it secure. And that's okay. I treat them in that case as a product team. But at the same time, there is a lot that the platform team need to do to allow those teams to be able to achieve their goal, to achieve their SLO. So it's the same for every other metric. Let's imagine like, lead time. It would be, for me, I think it would be pointless for me to have a lead time as I don't know, as a goal for the platform team because we can have the best, deployment pipeline in the world. But if the team is slow in the way they, I don't know, in their process to deploy to production, you're not going to improve lead time. So it's better than basically lead time is something you agree with all the product teams, maybe a different type of lead time depending on their needs. And then the platform goal is to help them. So if you're most like this trickle down to them, it's not like directly impacting to them. Again, what you said before, it can't even make sense. The size of the company, and also sometimes you need to compromise. I mentioned that everything I do, I think the platform is set up like that. No, we have a small team. So sometimes I have to, get some of these non-functional requirements to the platform team. And if I had a better team, I would do it differently. But again, it's not about perfection. It's about creating tools that allow team to do as best as they can.
I really appreciate this conversation, Simone. It's been interesting to talk through your approach. I do want to spend a little time on your current work as well. It's not every day that we have someone on the show from the electric vehicle space. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing at Onto and some of the work that you have been completing?
Yeah, of course. So Onto is a UK company. It provides subscriptions to electric cars. Subscription to electric car is like having your own electric car, but have it, using it without really owning it. So basically you get a car that is already insured. And if when it needs to be serviced, it's not your responsibility. We deal with that. So you get all the fun of having a car without all the pain of owning a car. That's the concept. And we've been running that like for, I don't know, I think it's been 4 or 5 years. I've been on two for 1 year, but I've been a customer and like a community member for 3 or 4. So, I'm a big fan of the company. And probably that was why I joined them. I really believe in this concept of, I want the flexibility of having an electric car, but I also think that at the moment, maybe you want to have a subscription to an electric car, not necessarily buying one, because the world of electric car changed so radically that maybe in 6 months' time, you wish you had another car. So if you have a
Totally.
subscription, basically like in 6 months' time, you just change car. it's a monthly subscription. So I change, I don't know, probably 4 cars per year. So this is what we do. And I must admit, it's quite a lot of fun. And obviously the challenge is that I sometimes I say to my colleagues, it's kind of like working with in the real world. It's not like having like a digital business. We're moving cars. If someone can access their car, they really get pissed. It's not like you can't access Facebook and it's kind of like, oh, whatever, I'll have a bit of time for myself finally. So it's kind of like there are some complication. Some service that we provide have a very high level of need to be very resilient. Obviously we hold a lot of data, so the security need to maybe be up for scratch. But also in general, it's quite complicated to digitalize like this user experience because not a lot of company have done it. How do you do, having a car without owning a car? That's quite a challenging sort of thing to do. But I think the most interesting challenge has been how do we make this like not owning a car as smooth as possible. Because again, that's the main reason why I use it. I mentioned servicing before, but it could be I have an accident. My car breaks. How do we deal in a way that you kind of like, imagine if you break your car and you start thinking, oh God, I need to do this, I need to do this. How can we make it like very, obviously there is like potentially, and people so often expect that there is, oh, this is going to be so expensive. Actually, it's not even, we're able to also make it at a decent price. So, I think it's a higher service comparing to owning a car, but at the same time, it's not that expensive.
Makes sense. It seems like that space is changing rapidly. Where do you see it going in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years?
I mean, yeah, you're totally right. I think at the moment, again, the speed of improvement on electric cars is a bit insane. How better battery gets, how efficient the car are getting. So it's just insane. So I'm expecting that we're going to follow that for, I don't know, the next 4 or 5 years. Hopefully at some point, there's going to be a bit of diminishing return. Obviously we've been having like petrol cars and things like that for a long time. So the level of improvement is minimal, almost like, for example, in terms of efficiency, is almost zero right now. So, but electric cars still have they can improve so much. So I'm expecting that a bit of that is gonna be down. Also, something else I'm expecting is that it's gonna be probably a revolutionary in terms of like how the motor industry is gonna look like probably in 4 or 5 years time. Certainly, there are, from my perspective, again, everything I say is misleadable and is not onto. But there are some manufacturers are definitely struggling more with electric cars than others. And so I don't know what's going to look like. Chinese manufacturers are doing incredibly well, for example, with electric cars.
Totally.
So it doesn't mean that in 5 years' time, some of the big names, big brands are not going to exist. And, we a bit similarly to what we do in the, in the mobile market, that a large percentage is going to come from, branded and especially Europe, a lot of brands of Android phones are Chinese. And that's okay. That's completely okay. But they displaced what they were like incredible big brands in Western Europe or US. So I'm expecting a bit of that is going to happen. It's probably partially is inevitable, I think.
It's going to be fascinating to see the changes that happen in that industry. Broadly, technology is just moving at such an incredible rate of change, and that space is still so nascent. Simone, I really appreciate you coming on to share these insights and also talking to us about metrics and platform teams. It's been great to chat with you again and catch up. Before we go, I do want to ask what's the best place for our listeners to keep track of the work you're doing and stay in touch?
Sure. So probably you can follow my website. That is simonecasciaroli.com. Or you can, follow me on LinkedIn. At the moment, I think I'm the best the social media where I'm more active. But I tend to post or blog relatively often. I have quite a few things on platform that I'm working at the moment. So, there should be new things coming through soon. So I would guess these are the two places to find.
Fantastic. Make sure you check out Simone's blog and also be sure to sign up for the Dev Interrupted Substack. Each week, we'll be giving you the latest episode of Dev Interrupted right into your inbox, as well as articles from some of the best engineering leaders in the industry, hopefully Simone soon, upcoming events, and all of your favorite Dev Interrupted episodes, past and present. All of the insight, none of the fuss. Check it out at devinterrupted.substack.com. And Simone, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it and great catching up.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And it was great to be here.